Hi, this is Rachel, and I wanted to talk about daydreaming. So, anyway, daydreaming is when you have a thought or idea and you take it somewhere or you let it take you somewhere. It's a daydream. So, anyway, but it's different than other things because you're having the idea, you're having the thought. It's not being given to you, it's not popping up. It's something that you're creating. So, anyway, daydreaming is like a spider web and it has different directions and roads. So if you imagine the different choices and different ways you can go with this daydream or can take you, you can imagine it like a spider web. So just like a spider web, it can catch stuff. So you have to be careful what you're feeding your daydreams. It is innocent and it's completely intentional when you're daydreaming if you're focusing on certain stuff. So if you have a monster and an angel and you're daydreaming about the monster, you're feeding that. You're feeding that daydream to be longer. You're feeding that daydream to have different parts of the web, the spider's web to go down. You're giving that daydream more places to take you with it. So, if you're focusing on the good stuff, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to expand the spider web, and you're going to end up making whatever you're daydreaming about bigger. You're giving it more possibilities. And you're giving it more strength to have a string over you. So anyway, part of that could lead into being distracted. Daydreaming can be a distraction. It can make you space out and miss an exit on the highway. It can make you space out, you miss an appointment. You could be running behind court or messing up in the middle of a speech or anything like that. You could be distracted and choke on food because you're so busy daydreaming. You know what I'm saying? You could spill hot coffee on yourself and or somebody else just because you're distracted. So that's something to be aware of is if your daydreaming is distracting, and if it is, what can you do about it? And I'm not trying to sound silly, but you might want to set aside time to daydream, like you're going to daydream an hour before bed or something. If that's the case, then you're not getting as distracted. You could be like, yeah, I want to daydream, but you know what, I have time set aside for that. If you're getting distracted, you can make yourself a routine or something so that it's more positive for you. But anyway, when it comes to distraction, can lead into other things like daydreaming as a coping skill. Now, I'm not trying to be offensive, and you don't need a disorder and you don't need an illness to use daydreaming as a coping skill. But usually when people use it as a coping skill, they were in an environment, where they couldn't physically leave it. So they were clocking out and having these daydreams, and they use a daydream as a coping skill to buffer in between reality and yourself. So the coping in between is the daydreaming. So what happens to a lot of these people who use daydreaming as a coping skill, and it's not usually a choice. It's usually something that was developed for some reason to protect. But anyway, it's important to notice because what happens to them is eventually when somebody's talking to them, if there's a certain word, a certain subject, a certain emotion coming up, or anything like that, a reminder, a trigger, they will shut off and daydream. They are using their coping skill. So like people with a disorder or personality or disorder or an illness, or somebody who's using it as a coping skill, pay attention, catch yourself when you're daydreaming. It's like, for example, if you're at a lecture and all of a sudden you keep wandering off, but you're catching yourself and focusing again. If you were to watch that again and know where you were wandering off, you might find that it was really important information that you were daydreaming at, and you really needed to know it. But guess what? You mentally and emotionally couldn't handle it, so your brain was clocking you out into a daydream. So sometimes it's important to pay attention what words, what's happening, whatever is triggering you to kick into the daydream as a coping skill, because it's not always a healthy thing to use it as a coping skill. And if you're not going through trauma and you're not being abused and you had the freedom to physically come and go out of a situation, you don't need to use it as much. So daydreaming can manifest stuff because you're visually like putting a play in your head. You're making it happen visually, you know? And if you're attaching emotion to that, you could cause it to manifest and you're going to attract it. So even if it doesn't happen, you're still going to attract things. You're going to attract synchronicities and all kinds of crazy stuff because of it. So daydreaming is scary when you're half asleep or you're spacing out, because if you're going from daydreaming into lucid dreaming, you know, you're not really going to feel the switch. You're just going to know you were daydreaming. The next thing you know, you're lucid dreaming. But what if you have a negative daydream, like I was talking about before? What if you have a negative daydream and you're slipping into lucid dreaming? You could easily make something happen, put a jinx on yourself, or mess up things for yourself, period. If you're going to take the risk, it's like having a bad acid trip. It's no different. It's a daydream. So, anyway, I would just take those into consideration and see what you can get out of it. Somebody was asking me to speak about it because I spoke about it in another video. But, you know, I guess like they want to hear about daydreaming. They don't want to hear the whole video I did. So I hope I said what you needed to hear, or whatever answered your question. So if not, you do have the other video to refer to, which is the Twin Flame video under my Twin Flame soulmate playlist. So anyway, thank you very much.